Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest podcast, Govs on the Go, the Legacy Series, which features some of the retired professors we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the Dean of the College. I'm also the host of today's podcast. And today, my latest guest for the new podcast is another Austin Peay legend, Dr. Ellen Kanervo. Dr. Kanervo, thank you so much for being on today's podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here on this lovely day.
Yes. And now, you and I first met. I think you came, I don't know if you remember this, but I certainly remember you coming to my office to talk about arts and heritage. And you had this wonderful idea. And I thought, this person is so together. I was so impressed that you had such a wonderful presentation and such a complex idea. And I thought, I don't know anything about what she's talking about, but I want to be involved with her.
Oh, nice.
And since then, we've had other opportunities to meet and do different things. But for those that don't know, kind of give everybody a life update. What's going on? You retired, and then what have you been doing since then?
I retired after 30 years of teaching at Austin Peay, and I thought I would clean out my house. I'm a pack rat, and I thought I will spend the time, and I did that for several months, and I decided I didn't like retirement. And so my good friend Inga Filippo had gotten me involved in arts and heritage, and an opening came up, and I'm now the executive director of the Clarksville Arts and Heritage Council.
And we will definitely talk more about that, but I like to begin everyone's story at the beginning. And your beginning starts not too far away, South Carolina. You grew up in South Carolina, and I think a small town, is that right?
That's right, Newberry.
Newberry.
It's not Mayberry, North Carolina. It's Newberry, but it really is Mayberry. It's got 10,000 people. It's had 10,000 people for probably 200 years. It seems to stay about the same.
Yeah, and you were the daughter of two educators. So I think my first question to you would be, how do you think that impacted your early life, being with both parents involved in education?
Well, my dad taught physics at a small Lutheran college, Newberry College, and my mother taught 11th grade English. And I just gave the eulogy at my mother's funeral a couple of months ago, and it was as I was recalling our lives together, I thought every paper I wrote was written 4 times, having my mother read it and I rewrote it, my dad read it and I rewrote it, and then I read it and rewrote it. Every speech I gave was rehearsed all the time. They were very interested in my and my sister's education.
What kind of things did you like to do early on as a child? Were there any indications that of what you might do later on in life?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm a great believer in drifting. I think that you drift into things that you enjoy and it moves on from there. We spent summers at the pool or just swimming in a pond on my grandfather's farm. We picked blackberries. We traveled a good bit. Since both of my parents taught, they had the summers off. And we spent 8 weeks camping through Europe. We shipped that camper back to the United States, and we camped through the West, and we camped through New England, and we camped through Canada and Mexico. So a lot of really fun trips.
Even just those experiences of travel, of seeing different places and seeing different cultures, how do you think that shaped you, because you were then exposed to more than just your backyard early on?
Well, it gave me a terrific sense of history. My mother was very interested in history, and so we talked a lot about the artifacts of things that we saw when we traveled. Traveling, one of the things traveling does is if you get lost, you know you're going to find your way back. It gives you a sense of you'll be okay, whatever happens.
Yeah. So what kind of activities then did you do in high school? Because I think sometimes when we get to that period of time, we start to find out what we may be good at. What kind of things did you do? Were you involved with music? Were you involved in the arts at all?
Absolutely not. I edited my school paper. I was a reporter, and then I was a page editor, and then I was the editor-in-chief of my newspaper. I was a class officer. I ran for student council. I said it prepared me for meeting my husband, who taught political science for 35 years. The newspaper was very important to me.
So very serious
Yes,
student.
yes.
Yes, but very successful student.
I was valedictorian.
Yes. So then you go on to college, and what was, and I know this is a kind of ridiculous question in that, what was your plan back then, if you remember what your
Well, my high school graduation present was 6 weeks in Madrid. And so I had a little bit of a head start in Spanish. And I was working on the newspaper in college, which I did edit. And so I was going to be a foreign correspondent for the New York Times.
Okay.
I had my Spanish down, and I was going to get the journalism when I graduated. So that didn't happen.
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
But what was it about doing that was attractive to you, at least back then?
Oh, I like to know what's going on. I like to know what's happening around me, and I love to tell people about it once I know.
So that was what you were doing in college, and then I always find it interesting. At some point in time, did you ever have any intentions of being a teacher?
Oh, no. I saw how hard my parents worked. I wasn't going to do that. But I went to graduate school to learn a little more about journalism. Newberry didn't have a journalism program. And I met the love of my life, who was going to be a college professor and had planned to do that since the 8th grade, I think. And it was something I knew, and since we were going to be in Madison, Wisconsin for a couple more years, I decided to go on and get a PhD and see how I liked it.
So Madison, I know, is much different temperature-wise and climate-wise than South Carolina. How did you, that must have been quite the change for you to go up there.
Yes, it snowed a lot. Even more than that, Newberry College had 600 students when I graduated, and Madison had 48,000 when I was there. It was a big change.
Yeah. Can you share how you met David and what you remember from that?
We were in the same dormitory, which bothered my parents a good bit. They had it so that men were on one floor and women were on the next floor, and men were on the next floor and women were on the next floor. And so we met in the elevator going up. And then we ate together for a while. And then he invited me on a date to see Richard Nixon's son-in-law speak. That's a political scientist for you. And then after that we went to, there was a informal dance get-together, and one of my friends looked at us as we were dancing, and she said, "Oh gosh, you even dance like Republicans." Oh no. I'm not sure we've danced since.
Well, I think he was probably testing you when you think back there, that if he can take somebody to a political scientist event and they don't go away running, then
I have been.
So you are in graduate school, and I think it's interesting how you both, were you looking for jobs afterwards together?
Dave was a year ahead of me, and so he was teaching at Texas A&M, and I was halfway through my dissertation, and I knew I was going to take another year to finish it. So we'd given ourselves a year to look for jobs together.
Okay.
And if we hadn't gotten them together, we were going to look separately. We had friends who were teaching across country, and I applied at Austin Peay, and they invited me for an interview, and of course the first thing I asked was chance of anything in political science, and they said no. And so I turned down the interview. And I guess about 2 months later, they called back. There'd been a resignation in political science, and Ed Irwin was chair of the English department at that time, and he said, we've been talking and we think you should have married a plumber so that you could go wherever you wanted to go. But we have an opening in political science. Do you want to come for interviews? And we did, and we've been here ever since.
Well, I'll be. So I don't know who the person was that left, but we need to send a thank you card for that.
We appreciate it.
So at that time, you come and you became very involved with the All-State, and I think you said that George Zepp was.
Well, when I was in college,
okay,
George Zepp edited the All-State.
Okay.
And at that time, college newspapers exchanged newspapers to get ideas and to see what was going on. And he had sent a copy of the All-State to Newberry College, and I was so impressed. I always looked at what I could do, our newspaper could do versus others, and I always thought ours was better than any of the other papers around, except George Zepp's All-State. He was very, very good, and so I thought when I saw an opening at Austin Peay, I thought, well, yeah, I'll apply there.
And so that was your job was also involving the All-State.
Not initially. I taught journalism and I taught English. I taught freshman English.
You did?
I had no credentials to teach freshman English. I had exempted out of it at Newberry, so I had never even taken freshman English, but I taught it. I hope I was okay. I had good faculty around me who were very helpful in giving suggestions. And after a year or two, the advisor for the All-State was ready to move on, and so I took over that.
So for those that don't know, what are the highs and the lows of being in charge of a college newspaper like you were?
Well, a fourth of my load was going to advisor, and 3/4 of my work was going to advising the newspaper. It was, I loved working with students so closely. That was really a very nice thing. And I remember when we had a party at our house at the end of a year, and all of the staff members were talking about the trips that over the years they had taken. We had gone to Alabama and Mississippi and Indiana to conferences, journalism conferences, and many of them had never even been out of the state. Now that was 30 years ago too, so I know life has changed. But they were talking about what the travels had meant, what meeting different people had meant, and I really felt very close to those students.
And certainly there must have been some, as you said, it took a lot of time and a lot of personal, where it wasn't an 8 to 5 job, was it?
We would put the paper to bed about 1 o'clock in the morning. And so every week I was up until 1 for one morning. And in those days, we did have snow. I spent 5 years in Madison, Wisconsin, and I never learned to drive in the snow. But here in Clarksville at 1 o'clock in the morning, I could not call my husband to come pick me up. And so I learned to drive in the snow, sliding down Madison Street at 1 o'clock in the morning. But now I can drive in the snow.
Let's not hope it doesn't happen, though.
You're right.
So you're involved with that. You were so productive as a faculty member as well. You know, one of the things that you shared with me was that there was an opportunity where you got to have an exchange with a former student that was working at the newspaper here.
Yes.
Can you share that story?
Yes. Patricia Ferrier, I had taught her in freshman English, and then she had majored in journalism with me, and she was the news editor for the Leaf Chronicle. And we had talked back and forth, and she was thinking that she had gone on and gotten a master's degree with us, and she was thinking she might like to teach. And I was thinking my experience in journalism was pretty thin to be teaching it. I mean, I had edited my high school paper, and I'd edited my college paper, and I had picked up war stories from friends who were reporters. And I thought, well, it'd be a good thing for me to have some professional experience, and it'd be a good thing for her to see if she really liked teaching. And so we worked it out with my chair and dean and the Gene Washer, who was publisher of the Leaf Chronicle at the time. And so I went to the Leaf Chronicle for a semester as not the news editor, but the assistant news editor. And she taught my classes. And it was a really nice experience for both of us, I think. She decided that she did want to go on, and she got a PhD and taught journalism for a lot of years. I had some interesting experiences.
Interesting that you also came back to work as a teacher rather than continue
yes.
on.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that surprised me was how little respect some of the people at the Leaf had for higher ed and for faculty. They really did not think I would be able to do the job. I was shocked. It never occurred to me that I couldn't do the job. I figured I could, but it was nice. I had 3 former students who were working down there, and they never questioned whether I could handle it, and they were very supportive. And when we would put the paper to bed at midnight, we would go out to Red's Bakery and have twice-baked potatoes. So it was a nice time.
Well, you certainly were becoming a night owl, I guess, or at least during that period of time of your life. Now, what were some of your favorite classes that you like to teach, and why?
Oh, you know, Dave and I, my husband, and I taught a course on politics and mass media. And that was a lot of fun to teach. The political science students did not trust journalists. They thought they were out to make them look bad. They thought they didn't appreciate political institutions. And the journalists were very skeptical of the political scientists. And so to have them all in one class was really interesting. And I think some of them really thought that they would take it to see the fireworks between Dave and me, which happened every now and then in class. But we still loved each other.
Sure. Oh, that's neat. Now, after 30 years, you decided to retire, and do you know what the definition of retire is? I don't think you do, because I think that the definition of retirement means that you stop working.
Oh.
But you didn't stop working. As far as I could tell, you have been just as active as when you were, because you were active as a faculty member, involved in the community, involved in providing service to the community. And I'm always just interested in, the motivation. Why, other than somebody may have asked you, but why did you then commit so much of your time and energy to different organizations?
I've had 2 jobs in my life. I taught for 30 years. It was a wonderful life. I felt that I was doing things that were useful and good for people. And then when I took this job as the executive director of Arts and Heritage, I have the same feeling that I'm doing things that are useful for the community. I mentioned my friend Inga Filippo, who was a librarian here, and who got me into Arts and Heritage, and she said, we will do good things for the community and we will have a good time doing it. And so that's been my mantra for the last 15 years as we've worked with Arts and Heritage.
Yeah, I love that. You also have been involved with Manoa Uffelman, a history professor, just retired, involved in writing books about telling, again, the local story, the local historical story as well. Is your work on that, is it also a labor of love, or do you see that as...
We got a team together on the first book. We asked Eleanor Williams, who knew a great deal about local history, to work with us, and we asked Phyllis Smith, who knew a great deal about Civil War, to work with us. And so, yes, that's been something that we felt was useful to the community and to understanding more about civilian life during the Civil War, and it's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you offered the opportunity last year for us to be involved together, Austin Peay and also Arts and Heritage, because I think that part of the reason for this podcast is I see a great legacy, the importance of the university within the Clarksville community and also the region. There needs to be that sort of connection, I think, as we continue on, because I think that those two areas are forever connected.
Yeah, I think you're right. Dick Gildry once said that historians need to mind the data that is around them, and I think that's right.
Well, I'm glad that you're doing that, and I thank you for being on today's podcast.
Thanks.
And we thank you for joining us on the podcast and all of our other podcasts. And also thank you for your continued support of the College of Arts and Letters in Austin Peay here. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless. Ellen Kanervo, everyone, thank you.
Thanks.